Hello, I'm Andy, and in this video we are going to talk about one of the most controversial buildings in Age of Empire 3. I'm of course talking about the shrines of the Japanese. What are the numbers in different scenarios and how good are they compared to villages or in late game compared to factories? Let's find out in this video. Let's start with talking about the basics of the shrines. Shrines are basically the more expensive Japanese house equivalent, which also generate resources. You can change the resource generation at any time, but they will always change globally the gathering of all shrines. They attract nearby hunts and gather more resources for each hunt or herdable animal around your shrine. Now let's go a bit more into detail. Shrines gather at a base rate of 0.14 food per second and 0.1 wood per second or 0.1 coin per second. This is the rate your shrines will have if there are no animals around your shrines. All the 3 Japanese shrine upgrades scale from the base rate. They don't affect the gather rate of extra livestock or hunts. The 3 Japanese shrine upgrades are the Heavenly Kami card, the Toshugu Shrine Wonder, and the H4 upgrade Tempo Reforms. In the next diagram you will see how the different upgrades affect the base gather rate of shrines. Heavenly Kami and the Wonder each increase the gathering rate by 50%, and the H4 upgrade Tempo Reforms increases the gather rate by 300%. This means with all upgrades you can increase the base rate by up to 400%, to 0.7 food per second and 0.5 wood or coin per second. Now that we've talked about the base rates, let's quickly talk about how hunts and livestock increase the resource gathering of your shrines. First off, the gather rate of hunts stays the same throughout the game, and the gather rate of livestock can only be increased with a British ally with the Livestock card. Sending livestock or animals to shrines increases all rates flat by a value between 0.7 for hunts and 0.14 for cows or herdables. All resources get the same amount of increase, so the wood coin generation benefits the most from extra hunts and herdables. In the next diagram you will see the gather rate increase for hunts and herdables. First off, let's talk about some general trends. Livestock generate more resources at shrines. They gather 50 to 100% more resources than hunts. Also generally, the more food capacity the hunts and herdables have, the more income they give at shrines. For example, generally the 400 food animals give an increase of 0.7 food per second, and the 500 food increase the resource gathering of shrines by 0.8 resource per second. The same is true for livestock, so sheep produce less resources than cows and llamas are between sheep and cows. This is not really consistent all of the time, but it applies most of the time. So for example, the elephants are an exception and also the yaks are a bit worse than cows. The only way you can increase the gather rate of your livestock is with a British ally who has the team card in their deck. This increases the gathering of your livestock at shrines by 25%. With this card and having 88 livestock at shrines, your gather rate is increased by 2.42 for sheep or 3.08 for cows. This is equivalent to 1/3 of a factory. Now that we've covered the basics, let's look at some common scenarios you would see when playing Japanese. Let's start in Commerce Age. Either you're a boomer and you're going for a Shrine Boom build with Heavenly Kami and the Toshugu Shrine Wonder, or you're going for another opening, usually without Kami and usually without the Toshugu Shrine. So without Wonder and Heavenly Kami, a shrine is worth roughly 2/3 of a villager if placed at 4 hunts. With Kami and Wonder, a shrine is almost a villager if placed near 4 hunts. Let's also quickly look at the economic break-even times of shrines. This is basically how long your shrine has to survive until it gathered back its initial investment and is only profiting you from that moment on. If you want to see the details of this calculation, you can look in the video link below, where I did a calculation of break-even times for most common economic units and buildings. Now let's compare the H2 shrines in different scenarios with generic villagers in the next diagram. There are 3 things I would like to point out. Building shrines near animals is key to increasing the value of your shrines. So building shrines, even with all cost reduction and upgrades, without animals takes way longer to break even than having shrines without upgrades but with animals. So always try to get your shrines near animals, and if you can't find any more animals, then it's not a super high priority to get more shrines. Even with Heavenly Kami, the Wonder and the Portuguese ally, where you can build shrines for 75 wood, building shrines takes longer to break even than producing villagers. It is still one of the strongest building booms though. They are way better than banks. Building shrines without upgrades and without animals takes forever to break even, so you would only do that to avoid getting housed. Let's quickly talk about the value of Heavenly Kami. Heavenly Kami reduces the wood cost of your shrines by 32 and increases the gather rate of your shrines by 50%. This includes the gather rate of your Toshugu shrine wonder. So usually you send your Heavenly Kami after you build your first shrine, so you are not getting housed. That means when you finished your shrine boom, you saved 618 wood, and the increase of gather rate of your shrines is worth roughly 2 to 3 extra villagers. This is assuming the best scenario or the worst scenario, that you're not losing any shrines to the enemy. In reality, in most games, you're still using some shrines to the enemy, so Kami is even better because you save even more wood. So in my mind, when going for Toshugu shrine and shrine boom, Heavenly Kami is a must pick. If you want to play more aggressive or go for a water build, you can also go for 3 fishing boats or 2 villagers or whatever H1 card you prefer. But even then, sending Heavenly Kami is also an option, since you still need to build some shrines to not get housed. In the end, I quickly want to look at how good your shrines are compared to factories in post-imperial age. In the next diagram, you will see the gather rate of 22 shrines, so your 20 shrines and your Toshugu shrine, without animals, with hunts, and also with sheep and with cows. And also the gather rate of factories for comparison. So your shrines are worth 1.5 to 3 factories, depending if you have friends or not. If your allies are feeding you with livestock, you can increase the gather rate of your shrines by almost 100%. With the British team card, you will get another 10% increase, roughly, if you have only livestock around your shrines. Okay, so let's quickly summarize the main findings of this video. First off, the more food capacities animals have, the higher resource per second they generate at shrines. Herdables always produce more resources at shrines than hunts. Heavenly Kami is a pretty good opening for Supremacy in most circumstances. Generally, you can say that shrines are a pretty good building. Shrine boom is still one of the strongest building booms in the entire game, and if you're playing against Japanese, you have to take measures against the shrine booms, which means you have to use some pikemen to siege down the forward shrines, or you use spies to snipe the monks. And lastly, in post-imperial with all upgrades, your shrines are roughly comparable to factories. They're better with hunts and herdables, and worse than factories without any hunts and herdables around your shrines. But those are just my thoughts about the shrines. What do you think about the shrines? Tell me in the comments. This also marks the end of this video. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye bye!